When you are going through a hard time in life and you need to grieve, a lot of times we don't know how. And then the people around us don't know how to help us grieve or how to acknowledge or understand that we are grieving. And so today on the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, we're going to talk about it. Welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. I am so excited and so thankful that you are here with me listening on the podcast or watching this on YouTube. And we're talking about how to grieve. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been through some stuff. If you have been through some stuff, I want you to type in the comments here on YouTube and just say, I've been through some stuff. I don't even know what you all have been through, but listen, I'll just say one thing was like when I went through divorce. Oh my God, that was probably the hardest thing I have ever dealt with in my entire life. And then the second was the loss of my grandma a year ago. Super hard. I mean, I was devastated through the divorce and through going through like the loss of my grandma. And, I'm thankful that I have been in therapy for years now so that I could, I knew what it looked like when I needed to grieve or whatever. But when I had found out that my ex-husband was being unfaithful, I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know all these different things and stages. And so I wanted to take some time to talk about it. So I'm not a scholar. I'm not a psychiatrist, counselor, or any of that. But I remember when I was, starting the process of divorce and I went to therapy. Now we had a previous counselor that we would go to for like our marriage in general. So I went back to her because she already knew me and knew parts of him or whatever. And one of the first things that, she said to me, she said that there are 5 stages of grief. As always, we always go on Google and we're going to search 5 stages of grief. So that way I can read them and have the actuals of what it is. Okay. So the first one is denial. The second one is anger. Third is bargaining. Fourth is depression. And then the fifth one is acceptance. And I had no idea that was a thing. And I think actually the reason why she brought that up in my therapy session was because I came to her one day and said, I feel relief. I feel happy. I feel so thankful that I'm no longer with him. And it was like, we weren't even officially divorced yet. And I was like, why do I feel so happy? And she said, well, probably because he was a huge weight on you that you didn't even know was on you. And once it was off of you, you were able to be yourself again, but you didn't even know it. But she said, also, I just need you to understand that this is going to be a roller coaster, like emotional roller coaster. Who sang that song back in the 90s? I can't remember, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Some of y'all do. And she said, it's going to be a roller coaster and you have to prepare yourself for that roller coaster. And she was right, because the week after that is when I started feeling like, I think it was depression. I started to feel, I didn't know it was depression, but it was depression. The point of me saying that today is to say that, like, as we're talking about how to grieve, is the truth is there is no right way. Whatever it is you are going through or have gone through or will go through, but you are going to have grief and you are going to have to learn how to grieve for you, not how to grieve for your husband, your wife, your kids, your mom, dad, friends. It's how to grieve for you, because everybody does it differently. And a lot of times we don't know how we're going to be until something happens, like I didn't realize how much I would cry about going through divorce as much as I did. But I said to myself, well, I'm sad, so I'm going to cry. I didn't realize how angry I was going to get with him. I didn't realize how much I was going to let's see, did I ever try to make him stay? No, I don't think I ever tried to make him stay, because it was a weird situation when everything went down, but it wasn't like he wasn't trying to leave, wasn't trying to stay. And it was weird, but I just remember being trying to understand why was he doing what he was doing. That was more so everything I kept saying, why? And trying to get him to talk, and because he just would not talk at all. And then depression. I think that I really felt the height of the depression after I moved to Houston, a year later or whatever. but I didn't know I was depressed. It looked like a lot of different things for me. One, it looked like work because one, I had to work to take care of myself, but I was working. Then what it looked like for me is that I was like, I am going to be successful. I'm going to show him that although I am sad and I am hurting, and I'm okay that you know that I was hurting or am hurting, I am also going to show you that I got this without you. And I did. And that was my way of like grieving, was I was just like, I'm going to go be successful, but I didn't know I didn't know it. Also, what happened was like, I just started to eat and I was like eating my feelings. Like food was never a big comfort thing for me. It just never was. And then it became that comfort for me. When my grandma passed in September of 2021, grief for me was shock. I remember when I woke up that morning and I saw the text message and it said, she's gone. I just was like, I looked at my phone and I said, I'm not going to respond to these messages yet. I'm going to turn this phone over. And I just laid back in the bed and I just sat there and was just like, I was in shock. I didn't cry immediately. I was just like in disbelief. And then when the disbelief kind of wore off, then the tears started to flow. And then I sent my first message back. And then, I was angry. I was angry at my mom and her siblings. I was angry at the people that lived with my grandma and that lived near her. I was angry at all them because I felt like I was one of the people in my family. Everybody would kind of like the strength they would glean from or whatever. And so they weren't acknowledging that I was probably hurting too, because most people aren't self-aware. And so I was like, then I was distant. But then once I got home from the funeral, I was like, okay, what is going on? And then I started having I didn't have facial paralysis, but I could feel my face twitching. I felt like my lip kept twitching, and then my face started to twitch, and then my fingers were getting numb, and then it was numbness in my legs and my feet and my toes. And I was just like, something is going on. I was like, oh, I am highly stressed. And so because I was so self-aware, I was like, shut it down. I had speaking engagements. I canceled everything and was just like, shut it all down. And I enrolled in therapy, right? A different kind of therapy because I already had a therapist talking about something else. So I went to betterhelp.com and I said, okay, I just want to talk to somebody about my grandma. And that's all I want to do with this is grandma. And we were talking through that. And it has been a journey of that. But more importantly, during that time, I was talking to God. It was like, I don't care what was, people were available. It was like, I was talking to God. And it was like, God was able to hear all of my thoughts, all of my feelings, because when I had gone through divorce, I didn't know how to be like with people or with God. I was cursing. I was angry. I mean, I was on a war path. Like most people would have no idea, right? I was doing it all in my journal or to my best friend, but the rest of the world had no idea. And I was just on a war path internally and just with my journal and my best friend. And so I learned that God could handle that side of me, and I was like, oh, he can? Oh, let me give it to him. It was really bad. I mean, it was really bad. I was cussing him. I was so mad, but I learned that he could handle that and he could comfort me in that. Like my best friend told me that. And I was like, and so I learned that through that process. But so then when my grandma passed, I was just like, okay, I'm not angry in the sense of I want to curse God or whatever, but I am very emotional. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to be raw and I'm going to be real and all that as long as it takes. What would tips or advice would I give you about grieving? Well, it's going to be really important that you are self-aware. That means that more than likely you can't see. If you're not a very, very self-aware person, you're going to have to get a therapist, a counselor. Your friends can't be all that for you. They can be as much as they can, but you need somebody this is what they do. This is their skill. They went to school for this, so that this person can help you through the process of grief, your grief. So they can help you see, they can help you process, they can help you walk through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, for whatever that looks like for you. Because even though your friend may have lost their mom, the way that you respond to it is differently. So I had some friends of mine who did not understand my grief around my grandma passing. And it was because they weren't that close to their grandparents the way that I was, because my mom and dad were not whatever, right? And so they thought that it was not that big of a deal until I was like mean to them, and they were like, what's going on? I'm like, she was like my mom. And I'm like, oh, well, and I'm like, because you didn't ask, right? But I had to learn that like I was going to have to articulate myself to people to understand, here's what's going on with me, so that you can understand whatever, like all the people that I had to cancel for speaking engagements, I had to tell them, hey, here's here's what happened with my grandma. She was like my mother, and here's how my body is reacting to this. I can't go to your event because I'm going to break. I'll have a breakdown if I go to your event. So I had to figure out how to articulate that to people. But thank God that I was self-aware enough and had the words to be able to articulate that. But you may not have that. So that's why you may need to go to a therapist so that she or he can give you those tools, right? Because if you don't have them, you don't have them. You're not going to say anything. You're going to say or do whatever it is you do, but you're really going to need to get access to tools. I highly recommend that you go through therapy, but also you got to be talking to God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, because they are going to give you more tools than the therapist can give you. Both of them together, four of them together, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, and the therapist together are going to help you so much. And yeah, and that is who is helping me with the stuff I've gone through in the past. And then even the current things that I'm going through, like I got to have surgery over the next like month or two. And I'm like, I thought that God was going to supernaturally heal me, and he hasn't yet. And God's just like, okay, so here's this expectation that you had. Here's what did not happen. And there's a part of you that's very angry, very hurt, very disappointed. And I was like, you right. He goes, yeah, so let's talk about it. And the more that like I talk about how I really feel, I felt myself crying and sadness and all that. And the anger that I didn't know that I had was like, it started to like kind of break off. And I'm like, oh, like I didn't really know that all that was in there until having this conversation, with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit to be able to understand what I'm actually feeling versus what I don't even know that I'm feeling. Okay. So if you didn't hear anything that I said today about how to grieve, is that you're going to need help to help you to grieve. And it's not just your husband, your wife, your best friend. They don't have the tools to help you with that. And as much as you want them or expect them, that's you can't put that on them. That's a lot to put on people that don't have the tools for that. They will be there with you and support you, but to really, really grieve in a healthy way for you, for your soul and all that, you really need to get with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, and as well as a trained professional. I don't have an affiliate for this, but you can go to betterhelp.com and you can probably sign up and get a session, or you can go to talktherapy.com and get a session there as well. And it's definitely going to be extremely beneficial for you, because you're just going to have somebody to talk through that can listen and that can give you tools as you listen. So I hope you found this episode valuable. I hope that every time you listen to the podcast or you watch this on YouTube, that you find this valuable for you. And if you have any questions and you're here on YouTube, go ahead and ask me in the comment section, and I will be sure to respond. So if you love the You, Me, and Jesus podcast, make sure you go to all the podcast players so you can listen to the podcast. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play.